Radical! Welcome to this week's episode of the Print on Demand Cast. Each week, join the gnarly Travis and Josiah as they provide insight into the print on demand industry and equip you with the totally tubular tools, advice, and strategies you need to achieve success, and hopefully have a few laughs along the way. Now on to this week's Totally Tubular show.
Greetings, everybody, and welcome back to the Print on Demand Cast. So excited that you are here. However you got here, Spotify, Apple, Google, doesn't matter. If you press play, if you subscribe, we're just glad that you're currently listening to us talk to you. And who is us? If it's your first time, my name is Josiah, and this is my co-host, Travis Ross, all the way from a Make Your Mark Design HQ in Colorado. Actually, we're both in Colorado, but we're just not in the same place. So, Travis, man, how is it going? How are things? What's new? How was your Monday? Let's start with that. I know we're recording on a Monday, an undisclosed Monday, because we don't know when this particular episode is going to air. So how was this Monday?
This Monday was busy because, as you know, the reason we are recording so many different episodes in this like little short amount of time is because I am getting ready to go out of town. It's my 25th wedding anniversary. I am taking my beautiful bride, to Hawaii for the better part of 2 business weeks. And so I'm going to be gone. And, Josiah, you're going to have to hold down the Print on Demand Cast fort while I'm gone. So,
yeah.
I don't know how you feel about that.
It's going to be good. I'm having a lot of fun. It's fun seeing all the new Facebook group members. It's fun doing more Instagram content and trying to kind of wrap my mind around what else we could do on these platforms. And so that's where a lot of my free time is spent. I need to start writing things down, is what I'm saying, because I have a lot of just thinking constantly between content for this and that, and it's just I'm all over the place. But yeah, you're about to jet to Hawaii, and so we are, as you said, batch recording. That's why the waffle section of these particular episodes are a little stilted. They're like mini waffle sections. Because we don't really know what's happening in our lives at this moment when this airs. Travis will probably sipping a pina colada or, Mai Tai or a old fashioned or something on a beach somewhere.
Definitely alcoholic drink.
Yes, there will be alcohol in it. That's all we know. But yeah, so we have an awesome main event this week, and we actually don't want to cut or really dive too much into the banter section just because this interview is great. It's about an hour, just the interview itself. So we wanted to save plenty of time for that with Regan Dickinson from Graphics Pro. I'm really excited to get into it because he gave some great information and reaffirmed the fact that we tell you guys all the time, go to a trade show.
Right.
He also has a business incentive to tell you that because it's what they do, but it doesn't make it any less true. Go to a trade show. So Travis, excited about the interview, man. How you feeling about it?
Yeah, I am too. He's a good dude. Met him, a while back at the Denver actual G Expo.
Yeah.
And or GP Pro
Graphics
Pro Expo.
And
the hyphen.
You guys will get it later. Yeah.
But yeah, so had broken bread with him. He's just a really good guy. Been on their podcast.
Did you eat it after you broke it?
Yeah, I actually ate the bread. Yeah, and then I've written for
that's right. We talked
magazine.
About that. Yeah,
yeah, we talked about that. I'm actually currently writing a second article that I got to finish up this week before I leave for Hawaii because the deadline is. So it's been a cool relationship that we've began and continue to cultivate, and it's just great to have him on the show because he's been in the industry a long time, man, and he's seen a lot of changes. He's seen a lot of things, and so it'll be really good, I think, for our listeners just to kind of hear his perspective on things. And so yeah, let's jump in.
Yeah, let's go to our main event this week. Our interview with Regan Dickinson.
Main event. Who's calling?
All right, Travis, very excited for our guest for this week's main event on the Print on Demand Cast. Someone that you and I have both met, someone that is, I guess, indirectly or directly responsible for us having our minds blown in Portland, Oregon for 3 days at an MBM show when we first got into the industry. But we're excited to bring Regan Dickinson on to the program. Regan is the VP of content for Graphics Pro and Graphics Pro Expo, which used to be NBM and now it's known as Graphics Pro Expo. So there's a connection for those that might not know. And he's been reporting on the graphics market for almost 30 years. So we're excited to invite Regan and his wealth of knowledge to the Print on Demand cast. Regan, it is great to have you on the show.
Thank you. And that was a very nice introduction. I don't know about wealth, but yeah, I'll do my best here. Okay?
Sure.
I've got a couple bucks in my pocket.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just trying to. Okay. We'll under to promise, over deliver instead of so.
Okay. Yeah. He's gonna talk about something. You know, that would be under promising.
He knows a thing about a thing or two, and
okay,
we'll go from there. But no, welcome to the show. How is things? I know you're just in our backyard here in Colorado. How's things going for you and in Graphics Pro?
Excellent. Couldn't be better. You know, y'all live here. You know what the weather's like. It's 0 one day, it's 50 the next, it's snowing the next. So we're just dealing with all that. It's been kind of a crazy winter, as y'all know. And but things are going very well for Graphics Pro and Graphics Pro Expo. You know, we have kind of a long history behind us. You know, the parent company is National Business Media, and you know, one time we had 3 basic graphics publications: Sign Business, which turned into Sign and Digital Graphics, and the Sign Business turned into Sign and Digital Graphics when wide format printing, inkjet printing, became kind of ubiquitous in the market. It became more viable, you know, because at one time in the sign industry, if you wanted a large format graphic, you had to have a huge machine. Typically, it was a 3M Scotch print machine, which was about $300,000, right? And there was a process involved there too. But once the inkjet printing came along, it really kind of changed the industry. And we've seen a lot of changes in the industry over the years. And so 3 publications into one called Graphics Pro. And one of the reasons behind that, it kind of happened at a weird but fortuitous time that we did this. We did this right before the pandemic, and we had our first Graphics Pro Expo coming out right before the pandemic, and we had to cancel that show halfway through. I think it was in
wow,
yeah,
that's rough.
Yeah, it was terribly rough, and it was a tough time to do that, you know, to start changing, you know, going from 3 publications to 1. But what we were seeing in the market was awards and customization professionals, sign companies, wide format printing companies, trade show companies, you know, anyone who's doing graphics kind of in that market, and printwear, which is decorated apparel, obviously. We were seeing those 3 markets interested in each other, so to speak. You know, some processes were crossing the lines and providing people opportunities to, you know, let's say that I was in awards, I had a trophy shop or an award shop. And I wanted to get into more full color. Customers would come in and say, hey, can you do a banner for me? I mean, I think that's a pretty natural thing for a customer to say, you do this stuff for me, can you do this other stuff?
Sure.
That's been going on actually for a while, as y'all know. And but I think it's become more common now. So we felt like for those people in the graphics market, they shouldn't be bubbled off, so to speak. They should know what's going on in other peripheral markets or vertical markets that might affect them and might give them opportunities for profit and growth. You know, there's always going to be some people who say, it's really important for me to focus on what I do and what I do well. And you know, you run into a number of those. There's, you know, if you're a screen printer, for example, that's just what you want to do. You want to screen print on apparel because you're good at it. You got the process down and you don't want to mess with other things. You just want to be the best. I get that. Yeah. And so, but we're seeing more and more people who are kind of crossing over and doing different types of graphics and seeing the opportunity to do that, you know, especially with e-commerce, you know, being able to have your own store and so on and so forth. I think that people are seeing that opportunity.
Yeah. I've had an opportunity to to hang out with you, Regan, and a couple other people from Graphics Pro, since you guys are really close to us. I mean, I feel like you're probably your offices are probably what, less than 2 miles or 3 miles
as the crow flies,
from ours.
about 2 miles, right?
Yeah. And so in that, you just kind of gave us a little bit of a history on Graphics Pro, but I'm curious, like, what got you into the printing business, into and then ultimately, into the current role that you serve at Graphics Pro?
Mm-hmm. Okay. You see all this gray in my hair? I got to tell you,
earned it. Yeah.
I don't know if I earned it. It just means I've had kids. I've been around the block a few times. But I was into printing right off the bat because when I went to college, I got a degree in journalism from the University of Houston with an emphasis on advertising, and my minor was radio and television. When I was in school, I worked for an ad agency in Houston, and I did that for most of the time that I was in college. And talking about print on demand, this was old style back then. This was actually before the Macintosh came out.
Wow.
Or that we were actually using it on a regular basis. I mean, that came in about the tail end of when I was going to college, and we were starting to use that. And I remember the big thing with when we got the Mac, there was a huge deal, because the problem with it was we weren't able to match colors. So we had to print out our own Pantone sheets and kind of adjust those Pantone sheets to what the actual Pantone colors were. That makes sense.
Wow.
But we were also doing, we had a big stat camera in there, and we were doing everything by hand. We were using wax paper to lay out the ads, and we were cutting little tiny type and kerning type and leading type that way. So it was, I think it was really beneficial for me to get a good analog education on that, something outside of the school where I was really focused on the writing side of it, and the editing. Right. And so I was getting a different education, and I think ironically enough, that education left. I worked for a number of newspapers and magazines. And then I moved to Denver, Colorado from Houston. And this was about 93. And there was back then when you look for a job, it was newspapers, right? So
Sure.
Everything I was doing was being printed ultimately, right? There was a job opening for an associate editor at Sign Business Magazine. So I interviewed, and I was just, it was just interesting to me because I was like, I think I can really enjoy writing about this because this is kind of what my background was too, at least at the ad agency. They were doing some of the same things, right? The sign, it was the sign making business. And so it was all about design and typography and, making sure that all of those elements work to draw customers in. And how do you do that? How do you use color and so on and so forth? So it was kind of a natural fit for me. Yeah. So I started at Sign Business. I was the editor there. We started to bring on some other publications. We had an auto graphics publication, which was really focused on the automotive graphics market, whether it was vinyl striping or pin striping. There was still a lot of hand painting back in those days. And then, of course, when wide format printing came along, that's when we started a magazine called Digital Graphics. And then we put Sign Business and Digital Graphics together. We had a screen printing magazine that was more on the industrial side, in addition to printware. So I was overseeing all of those publications at one point, and then took a little detour and went to start some publications in the parks and recreation and camp business markets. And that was fun. It was a totally different market. I think what it showed me is that it might be, when you get into a new market or you're trying to learn something, you just got to dive head in. You just got to dive into it, because
yeah.
And so I was able to kind of learn those markets. But then I started to work for a company in Florida called LexJet, pretty well known in the industry, really great company. I did marketing and public relations for them for about 8 years. So I was on the other side. I was an editor on one side, and then I went to LexJet, which is now called S1. And at S1, I got to see the other side of it. I was trying to get media, trying to get press releases placed and buying media and so on and so forth. So I got to see that side of it. I learned a lot. They're really good business people, really solid company. And they gave me the opportunity to learn about a little bit more global marketing. We did some global marketing through, we had one of our subdivisions was called Brand Management Group. And Brand Management Group was representing Kodak and HP globally. So, I got to learn a lot about that side of the business. And then in about 2015, I got a call asking if I was interested in heading up an automotive publication at the same company I worked for that I started with in '93, National Business Media. It's called The Shop. And I took the position and did that for a while and really enjoyed the automotive aftermarket. Again, had to learn a new industry. There were some similarities. There was some crossover from the standpoint that there was a lot of companies, or not a lot, but there was a decent amount of companies in the automotive aftermarket, restyling companies that did vinyl wraps on vehicles. But it was about accessorizing vehicles on the restyling side. It was about the go fast parts on the performance side. And then when we started to kind of take these three publications, sign, business, digital graphics, and awards and engraving into one, that's when I became the VP of content for those publications. I had the background there, and knew something about content. So
I guess so. I was just going to say there was a couple of things I wanted to pull out of there that I thought were really interesting.
Sure.
First thing is, I feel like you have more experience in marketing and content creation in your pinky than Josiah and I have in our whole entire lifetime.
Right.
So, I was interested when you were talking about, I really enjoyed typography and design and how to use those things to draw in customers. And I feel like those skills are exactly what it takes to build a profitable print on demand e-commerce presence, or, asset, I guess, if you will. And I don't know. It would be interesting to kind of dive into some of that. I don't want to take us too far off course, but can you just speak on to that a little bit? Like, what did you mean when you say I can use color and typography to elicit, emotion, to gain the trust, to actually have someone buy it, buy that thing?
Right. Well, first of all, I don't know that I know more in my little pinky than you do, generally speaking. Really, because all my knowledge is because I talk to people like y'all. We had Travis on, obviously. We had Travis on our podcast, and that's where I'd learn a lot, is by talking to other people. I mean, that's really what it's about. And I feel like I'm barely scratching the surface, frankly. As far as that goes. Now when it comes to design, I think is probably the most important aspect. If you're going to be in a printing graphics business, if you don't have good design, then I think it's fairly pointless, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's just, I think it's a good idea. Now you speak about color, it's good to know what colors work for certain things, what they evoke psychologically, like red means stop and yellow means warning. A dark blue is usually connotes something like wealth, or it's something better than most things, right?
That's why Facebook is blue. I get it now.
Right. So there's some basic color theory about that and how it affects psychology. And when I talk about typography, I think one of the things that what I've noticed sometimes is, if you haven't come up in an and I'm not saying that this is true across the board. I'm just saying I think it helps to come up from an analog standpoint, that you worked manually on something in the graphics market, because you really had to pay attention to things like kerning, the space between lettering, the space between lines, because it can be distracting if it's not, if it doesn't look right. You know,
Sure.
it's almost we always used to do the squint test when we were looking at our ads. You know,
Yeah.
does it kind of come together when you squint at it? Right.
Yeah.
So it's all those
it's
things.
interesting.
Yeah. And I guess the other important thing is the design. Is it just for a mug? Is it just for a t-shirt, or is it going to go across a lot of different media, so to speak? Is it going to be on a poster? Is it going to be on the side of a van? Will it be on a pencil? You know, I think you have to plan for those things as well. Then make sure that you maintain the integrity of a design across various applications.
Yeah, that's interesting. You say, I mean, I recently purchased a font or downloaded a font. I don't think I purchased it. That I thought someone else was using on a project, and I needed that font for this, project. And I don't think it was the right one, but I remember the kerning was just bad on it. And so even though it was, professionally packaged and, advertised on one of my accounts as, this is this cool font, when I opened it up and I just looked at how it was laid out as I typed, various words into the design, you could tell that they had not spent the time in determining that kind of squint test proof, if you will.
Right.
So it's super important. That's really interesting. Yeah.
So, I mean, we've covered a lot of ground in the first probably 15 minutes. But talking about Graphics Pro specifically, what would you say, is the mission of Graphics Pro as a company?
It's to elevate everyone's business that's in the market. I mean, that's the primary goal. I mean, that's what we're after. I mean, every time that we talk about what's the article that we're going to run in the magazine, or what are we going to run in the newsletter, or who are we going to talk to on the podcast? And every time we have to think, is it going to help somebody? I mean, I feel like if we help one person, and maybe that's just not a high enough bar, but I have to look at it that way. I have to look at, if I'm helping one person, if it's improving their business, if they're deriving more profit and more joy from their business because of something that we found that we've been able to share with them through our publication, at the trade show, whatever the case might be. That I mean, that's kind of the mission in a nutshell. But
sure.
Yeah. For example, we had a show last year, and one of our speakers, a guy named Matt Charbonneau, he's in the sign industry, and he gave a talk on pricing. We were walking out of the class, and a lady comes up, and she was literally in tears of joy, I think, because she said, "I can't tell you how much this is going to help me. This is really this opened a door for me." It's just to hear that. And that's what I want for everybody who comes across Graphics Pro or Graphics Pro Expo, whether they're reading the magazine, listening to the podcast, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's occurred to me, like, through the course of your professional history that you've just kind of outlined for us, working for publications and bringing different publications under one roof, that it's kind of like a history of being an information broker. You're bringing in information through these publications to help people and being an arbiter of vital information that'll help people, which is incredible. I think that's, I know I can speak for Travis in the creation of this podcast. We have the same goal as you do in a nutshell. If it just helps one person, if one person can walk away from listening to one of our shows, either feeling encouraged, inspired, or moved to action, we've done our job. So it's certainly something that's relatable for sure.
Right. And I don't want this to be a mutual admiration society, but we had Travis on the podcast. Travis writes for Graphics Pro magazine, and there's expertise there, and that's what we're looking for. It's not only expertise or someone who's built a good business, has a good perspective, someone who's relatable, and also it's a peer-to-peer kind of version of things. We really try to be as peer-to-peer as possible. We want as many different perspectives from as many different parts of the country, even geographically. And the reason for that is because, somebody in Mobile, Alabama might have a great idea for his market, but somebody in Boston, Massachusetts might go, well, that's not really going to work for me. However,
sure,
maybe there's a way that I can kind of twist that or
Yeah.
use it in my own market in a different way, right? You know, maybe they can even glean something from somebody. They might not use the exact same approach.
Yeah. I'm curious as to how would you say that like Graphics Pro magazine or just Graphics Pro, you know, your newsletter, those types of things. How do you because it seems as though your market is at least since I've been talking to you, it seems to be kind of broadening a little bit. It used to be more professionals who were running print shops and doing sign shops and those types of things. And since you've been talking to me, and we've had several conversations about this, Regan, it seems as though your market is slowly you're seeing the benefit in some of these people who are just makers. They're crafters at home, and they're starting to, they've got one heat press and a Cricut, or whatever, and helping them kind of move from that spot into maybe some more industrial or professional equipment. Can you speak more to that as far as like, do you have? I mean, it first of all, is what I'm saying true? And then how do you see Graphics Pro helping some of those, frankly, some of the listeners in our audience right now that are kind of, they don't have a $50,000 budget to buy a brand new DTG. They've got a Cricut and a heat press and they're doing vinyl, or, how do you see Graphics Pro helping them?
Okay. Well, at first, if that's the situation, you maximize what you've got and then move on to the next level, right? But be aware of what's out there. I mean, I think that's part of what we're trying to accomplish here, so that people are aware of what processes are available to them. But there are processes that they might not have even thought about. They might look at a show like Graphics Pro Expo and say, well, I've got a heat press, I've got a DTG, and I'm just doing some t-shirts and maybe some stickers and whatnot. Why do I need to go look at wide format printers? Well, when you maximize that, that's something that you might want to look at. You just be aware of it and be aware that there are other opportunities out there. So that's not really answering your primary question. No. And that is that right about the time, like I said, that we put Graphics Pro together, the pandemic happened. But what we also found was during the pandemic, there were a lot of people in that boat. There were a lot of people who they got downsized, or they lost their jobs, or they got just sick of it, and just said, going out on my own, and I'm taking, perhaps they even had it as a hobby before. They were doing they were a maker of some sort, some people were into arts and crafts, and, maybe some people were in some woodworking, whatever the case might be. But what you found, I think was, I don't know if you call it an explosion of those types of kind of fledgling businesses that came out of the pandemic. But we've seen a lot of that, in talking to some of our advertisers that sell kind of across the three markets. They saw an awful lot of that. They saw a lot of people kind of migrating to their products, and we addressed a lot of that. Last year we had a special event, a conference called Start Here Academy. It was a 4-hour event, and we had speakers that kind of really fit into that. They're influencers, if you will, YouTube influencers, and they gave talks about their businesses and how they got started. They had a t-shirt side hustle or whatever, or they were doing arts and crafts, and then they got a laser engraver, or they got a Cricut, et cetera, and their business started to pick up, and so they're kind of the vanguard of the people that are coming up now that are in that same boat. And so Graphics Pro does address that. I mean, if you read Graphics Pro, I think you're going to be educated about what's going on in the market, what's available to you, and what the various paths are that you can choose, what all the options available to you. And I think that's the biggest thing. It's nice to have it, I think, in one spot. And in a lot of different media that you can, if you don't like to read a magazine, a lot of people still like to. I'm in that age group, and and the demographics traditionally of those three markets that we serve, awards in customization, decorated apparel, and sign and digital printing. Most of the people that that own those companies or in management of those companies are kind of this generation, but the new generation's coming along. And so obviously we have multimedia, we do video, and we have newsletters, and we do social media, et cetera, et cetera. So there's just a lot of different ways that we provide that information. So might as well take advantage of it. And it's all free. All you have to do is tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure.
Yeah. And it's the same at the show too. The registration for the shows is free. And I get excited about it because I love to see people getting in and getting educated and really talking to, when they go to the show, for example, really talking to the suppliers and digging down and finding out more about their products. And, kind of going back to the mission, it's kind of related to, what you do at a trade show. And people go into the trade show is have to have a healthy skepticism about things, not to accept the conventional wisdom. I mean, that's one of the things that we preach here all the time is if we get an article in from somebody, don't just take it at face value, be skeptical about it, ask questions about it. Don't, oftentimes because I've interviewed a lot of people and I'll say, well, tell me about your customer service. And they'll say, well, we're good at customers. That's all we do. We just love our customers. Well, like, okay, but what does that look like?
Yeah, what does that mean? Yeah,
it has to look like there has to be a practical outlook on that. There has to be it has to actually be working, and why is it working? Right. So you have to ask those questions. So it's not don't settle for the pat answer. Whether you're when you're networking and talking to other people, just ask questions.
Yeah.
And try to find out what's behind everything and what's motivating things and what's making things work for them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of trade shows, I mean, I mentioned it at the top before your intro we brought you on, but Travis and I went to an NBM show in Portland, and I'm sure he's communicated this story to you, but we were two of those individuals that were walking into the trade show with just a knowledge of mugs, coffee mugs. It's all we'd been doing is sublimating coffee mugs, and through the course of that show, to your point about asking the questions, we went to a lot of people that we met and a lot of suppliers and producers, people that own print shops and networking, and said, so what are you doing on Amazon? What's your e-commerce strategy? And they would look at us like we had a horn growing out of our mouth. Like, why would we do e-commerce? What does that mean? I don't understand why you would sell on Amazon. And we walked away from that realizing like, oh, okay, well, there's a space here for people to understand the benefits of print on demand and direct to garment and that kind of stuff. So we benefited from trade shows, and we always tell people to go to as many as you possibly can. And so I want to ask you, as someone that's on the other side of that is helping put on these trade shows from a company standpoint. And I think I know the answer, and this is a softball and it's a lob and you can knock it out of the park. But
what if I don't?
Who do you think?
Louise, what if it's really a curveball that I can't hit? But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a knuckleball, and we'll see what happens. But who do you think? Who do you think would benefit from going to a trade show? Like, if someone's listening out there and they're on the fence and they're trying to decide, who would you say it would benefit the most from going to the next Graphics Pro Expo?
Oh, wait, okay. If you want to say who's going to benefit the best, I would say it's the people in the boat that we were just talking about.
Sure.
Just getting started in the business. They're just starting to learn. And obviously there's a lot of stuff on YouTube. I mean, I got to be honest with you. I'm turned into this weird kind of YouTube addict. And it's not, no. I mean, well, like when I at work, I'll spend 30, 45 minutes, an hour sometimes just checking out what's going on. And, I'll do keywords. Who are the influencers? What's going on out there? What kind of information is going out there? Right.
Yeah.
That's great. And I use YouTube to learn things too, hey, I have a problem with my front door lock because it's one of those, keypad things. It's not working well. How can I troubleshoot that? Well, I'll go to YouTube. But then you'll see there's like 50 videos and you're like, which one do I use? And
There are.
Sometimes if you're really looking for information, it can be a little bit confusing, so I think the nice thing about a trade show and our, the publication and the information that we disseminate is that it is curated. You don't have to choose and pick and choose and go, which one's the right one, right?
Sure.
We try to make the right one, the right one off the bat. So, and at the trade show, like I said, I think I pretty much kind of answered this question when I was telling y'all that it's so important to really go dig in and ask questions and find out what's out there. I mean, I think that's what the huge benefit is of it. And again, going to a Graphics Pro Expo where you can explore other markets, more opportunities. I'm obviously selling it, but I believe it. I'm not just saying it. I don't care if it's our shows. There's other shows out there too that do a fantastic job, and a lot of them are, a little bit more focused. I would say, maybe they focus on a certain aspect of the market, and that's fantastic. That's good stuff. And so I think what we're offering from a trade show standpoint is that number one, and then two is that the regional. So we're serving parts of the country that don't necessarily get to see a graphics trade show near them, and just by the nature of that, because they're regional shows, they're not international shows. They're a little bit smaller, so they're a little bit more intimate, a little bit more personal. I mean, can I throw that back at you? I mean, what did y'all find when you went to Portland? We're doing Portland this year in July.
Yeah,
and
I saw that.
Yeah, and it's one of our smaller shows. And that's simply because there's if you go to the very high population centers, the shows are just going to be bigger because there's more people, right? But Portland's a great show, or it was. And just from your standpoint, is that kind of what y'all went into it like? Did you see that opportunity? I mean, I'm just curious as to what you found in Portland. You mentioned it.
Yeah, Travis, you want to go first, and then I can follow up, or vice versa.
I mean, I was really trying to learn more about the industry. I just wanted to know what I didn't know, and I knew there was a lot to it. And I also knew that I'd probably go there, and there'd be a whole lot of things that I would not even consider from a business perspective. But I remember, to your point about just asking questions, I was asking the UV guys if these things could print on shirts. So I didn't have to buy a DTG. I could buy just a UV and have kind of the shirt thing and other things, and obviously now, several years removed, I would never advise anyone to buy a UV machine and try to print on t-shirts.
You were looking for the magic bullet, right? I think
I really was. But
are we still looking for the magic bullet?
But at the same time, I'm always, but I was able to, ask those questions. And even if they were kind of silly questions, I didn't feel like anybody made me feel stupid or dumb. Everybody kind of, I think they're just so overjoyed to be able to actually get to talk to people and exhibit and share all of their information too.
Yeah.
It's a cool community. And I think not only did we come away with, hey, e-commerce is a viable part of this industry that's missing, I also feel like we came away with, man, this is a cool industry. People really want to help each other.
Yeah.
There were several people that we got business cards from as we were just talking to them, and not necessarily vendors, but just people that were at the show. And we would just strike up conversations with them, and they'd be like, oh yeah, well, we do this. And if you need any help here, give me a call, send me an email. And that happened multiple times. So it was very encouraging from an industry standpoint as well as a knowledge standpoint.
Yeah. I have to agree. I think it was came away with a greater appreciation for what was capable in the industry, but also for a greater appreciation for the people in the industry. I know for me, I had no real grid as to what I was getting into. Like I said earlier, I was just sublimating coffee mugs, which is the only kind of printing we were doing at the time. And then walking in and seeing direct to garment, it sparked an idea in my head that caused me to then go home, talk to my father-in-law, who I was working with at the time, and say, hey, I have an idea to completely change our business model, and this is what it is, and really leveraging influencer marketing. And so it was really, really educational for me, drinking from a fire hose the entire time. But I mean, there was multiple times Travis and I sat down at one of those round tables and just got out a notepad and we were like, so what do we do? And just like furiously writing down ideas. But yeah, it was very welcoming. It was very educational, great networking, and ultimately was inspirational enough for me to go back to Colorado and completely change course and say, this is what we need to do, because there's a hole here and I think we can leverage this. And it really opened my eyes to a lot of possibility. So it was great.
I know I'm the one being interviewed here, but can I ask you one more question? Can I ask y'all one more?
Yeah,
of course.
All habits are hard to break.
Yeah. So y'all went to Denver, right? Y'all went to the Denver show last year.
Right? Yeah, we did.
So what was the difference between when you went to Portland, which is really the first time you went in and looked at something like that, and then Denver, where you're a little bit more seasoned, right? And you had that business plan, you had that business model kind of set up. What was the difference?
I would say for me, it was, I already recognized a lot of the companies, a lot of the machines, because I did, I've have multiple years in the industry. I own some of the machines that they're showing here, and that was not the case in Portland. Everything was brand new. I might have heard about a machine, but I'd never seen it in the flesh. And so, because I don't know that we've talked much about like how many shows we went to in that first year or two. I think we went to
a bunch, huh?
Yeah. I went to Portland. I went to the Indianapolis with a show, the NBM, with another guy. I went to
SGIA that year.
Yeah, SGIA, which is now Printing United.
Yep.
Which that's just a massive show that has huge
big machinery too, like big capital equipment, right?
3D printers as big as my office. I mean, so obviously had no interest in a lot of that stuff, but it was still just, that was another one that was just like, oh my gosh. So yeah, coming to a Denver show, which you guys have told us that is one of your smaller shows, if not the smallest show that you guys have, it was like, okay, I pretty much know it, but it's still good to just go, especially if it's in your town, and just connect with some of those vendors that you only talk to via email every once in a while. And the cool thing was my son Tate won tickets to an Avalanche game through one of your guys' drawings, and we got to go to an Avalanche game just because we attended the show for free. So appreciate that, Regan.
Don't thank me.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I think that's smart to do that. I mean, to go to a bunch of shows, do not just go to one. Go to as many as you possibly can, because it can't do anything but help. Right. Big show, small show, whatever, and when I say small, it's relatively small from the standpoint, it's still a decent sized show. And, one of the great things about the regional shows is that I think you get to see more of the regional suppliers too, and you get to know them. And I think that's important. And I think that's important for people to know who are maybe kind of in that kind of limbo area between being a full-fledged business, a professional in the market, and someone who is as a maker, a crafter, a hobbyist, whatever, and they're trying to make that move, is to get to know suppliers and to even get to know manufacturers, because the manufacturers in our market are very personable too, and they care about their customers by and large. And the thing that you get that you don't get if you go to other companies outside of our market and you get other types of machinery that are related, is you don't get the same type of support. You don't get, it's a whole different world of support, and they're good with pricing and inventories, and it's just it's a lot better business experience, I think.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we have Graphics Pro Expo'd this thing to the ground. We talk about, like I say, we talk about these shows all the time because there's so much value there. But for the sake of time, you want to just go ahead and move on, Josiah? You want to maybe?
Yeah. Do we want to do
else?
Do you want to do dad jokes first, or should we do the magic questions? Dad jokes.
I always want to do dad jokes first.
Okay. Well, so speaking of trade shows, Reagan, we just got back from one a couple of weeks ago, and we walked around the sales floor. It was an interesting experience for me because it was the first time that I was going primarily to just kind of grassroots market for this podcast. So we wore shirts that said, "Tell me a dad joke" on the floor, and got interviews from vendors and attendees and
I saw some of those. They were good.
Yeah, people on the street. It was very, very interesting. So all of that to say,
I want to know what you cut out of that. Did anyone go?
Yeah.
No. Can
No,
I tell you a mom joke? I mean,
we had an interview yesterday that asked us to tell a mom joke, actually,
Okay.
and that I don't know when that will air, but it was the first
Right.
mom joke in history. But everyone's favorite segment of this show is the weekly dad joke. So with that, we'll throw to the unnecessary and arbitrary bumper to introduce the segment.
Time for the weekly dad joke.
Fantastic.
Yes, we love unnecessary bumpers.
I don't blame you.
So you're the guest, Regan. So we're gonna have you bring the first dad joke this week.
Okay, I'm going to tell a joke that my dad told me. It's my dad's joke.
So it's a grandpa joke.
Yes.
Okay, it's a grandpa joke, but he told me before he was a grandfather. My dad went to the University of Texas, and so he was very much anti Texas A&M, Texas A&M Aggies, and one of the joke in Texas, people told Aggie jokes. It was kind of like a dumb person joke, right? Aggies were farmers, etc. Right?
Yeah.
Agriculture, right? Anyway, so we told Aggie jokes back in Texas, and here's one of them. Okay, so there's a Texas Longhorn, a Houston Cougar, and a Texas A&M Aggie, and they're in a firing squad. They've done something. I'm not going to go into the backstory on this. I don't care what they did, but just believe me, they ended up in front of a firing squad. So firing squad's getting ready, and they say, "Ready, aim." And the Texas Longhorn points in the distance, says, "Tornado." And they all look around, and he runs away. Houston Cougar gets up to the firing squad, and they say, "Ready, aim." And he says, "Sandstorm," and points, and they all look toward what's not a sandstorm, and he runs away. Then the Aggie gets up there, and he says, "Ready, aim, fire." Thanks, Michael.
Yes.
Nice.
Oh, that's great.
That's worse
All
than
right,
a Michael
chat.
Scott joke, isn't it? Yeah. Okay.
Hey, that's they if you don't get a good eye roll, it's not a good dad joke. So.
Yeah, it's not
Right,
if it's not groan inducing, is it a dad joke? That's the
Right.
question.
Yeah. Or a grandpa joke.
So anyway, I've been kind of looking around, and I've gotten just to kind of maybe have some secondary income, and I've gotten a couple job offers recently for security guard positions. One was at a Samsung store, and the other one was at an iPhone store. And I'm really having a hard time deciding, because I don't know if I want to be a guardian of the galaxy or if I want to be on Apple Watch.
Okay, I thought you were telling a real story there for a second.
See, that's the danger.
Genius.
Yeah, it happens all the time with he and I. We never know when each other are actually starting a legitimate conversation, or if it's going to end in a punchline. And it's always that awkward moment when he says something that's not a joke, and I look at him waiting, and then the punchline never comes. So
story of my life.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. All right, so we're gonna go to a segment we call the Magic Questions. It's a set of questions we always ask people, or when we have guests, we always ask them the same questions out of this list, or pick out of this list. So we will transition to that segment, and yes, it has another unnecessary bumper. It's magical.
Copyright issues. Okay.
I'll have you know. I say this. I say this every time. We've uploaded that to YouTube handfuls of times, and not once have ever gotten a copyright infringement on it.
I know. It's just it's ridiculous. It's fun.
Crazy. Yeah, because it's not kind of the Disney song. It is the Disney song.
Font. Little T-shirts. It looks like instead of
Spire. Little flags.
Okay.
Yep. All right, Travis, you want to go ahead and ask the first magic question?
Sure. If you had one tip to offer a beginning, print on demand business, somebody who's aspiring to begin their business, what would that tip be?
Oh, there's so many, Travis. But the first thing that pops to mind is, you know how people talk about having a mission statement. You asked me what the GP mission was, right?
Yeah.
I think a mission statement is important, but I think the problem is that what happens is that people do the mission statement and then they kind of forget about it. They shelve it a little bit. It kind of goes in the dustbin because you're busy with other things, and you're not thinking about the mission. But you absolutely have to craft a good mission statement, and you have to stick to that. And it has to be a practical part of your business and everything that you do.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, because it goes to customer service, it goes to hiring employees. I mean, you have to, for hiring employees, for example, you want to make sure they're on board with what you're doing as well. And this is not a completely original thought. I agree with it, and we do that at GP. We're always thinking mission, mission, mission. Every time we put a show together, we write an article. It was one of my guests, a guy named Sean Tomlin with Designer Wraps. He brought that up. He brought it up from the employee hiring standpoint. Make sure they're on board with your mission. Ask them questions about how they approach things, and does it connect with your vision of and your mission and how you see your business. So I thought that was really good advice.
Yeah, that's good. No, that's
awesome.
good. Good answer.
All right, question number 2. This one's always kind of fun. If you had to start all over and you lost all of your current contacts from scratch and you wanted to stay in the industry, what would you do first?
I would go online and I'd subscribe to Graphics Pro.
I'd go to a trade show or two.
Yeah, I'd go to a trade show. Right? That's a really good, that's an interesting question. I'm trying to think because, like I said, I've worked in different markets before. I was in the sign industry in the graphics market for so long. And then I went into this parks and recreation and camp market. And and I did the same in the automotive market. I was totally green. I had no clue really. I liked cars. I went to camp when I was a kid. I enjoy parks, state parks, local parks, national parks,
amusement parks.
Yeah.
So you've already done this. So this should be a real easy answer.
Is it though? It has to do with networking and asking questions. Yeah. And not being afraid to ask questions. And not being afraid to ask what you might think are stupid questions.
Can this UV machine print on t-shirts that I can sell my customers? That's a stupid question. Now that I know it, that it's stupid, but at the time I didn't realize it was a stupid question.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And no one looks down on you for that. I mean, anyway, even if they did, what are the chances 3 years later you've got this booming business, everything's going fantastic, that something's going to happen where someone says, God, I remember when he came by my booth and he asked me if this UV printer was going to do t-shirts.
Yeah. It'll be a full circle experience if one day
you shouldn't buy products from him.
We book that guest on this show and he comes on and he's like, wait a minute. You're the guy that asked me about the UV and the t-shirt. You're an idiot. What a full circle experience that will be if that were to happen.
I'm keeping it up here just in case I need that information for future reference.
Your credentials have been called into question, Travis.
Right.
Oh, dang it.
It's your fault.
If I ever need to do that, Travis, I'll bring that out.
Dang it.
That's great.
I'm not seeing that as a possibility, but
all right, Travis,
all right.
You want to ask the third one?
Last question. This requires a crystal ball and a turbine because we want to know what you think the future of print on demand is.
What are holograms?
Okay.
No.
Nice. Who is it? It's Johnny Carson. It's the
Karnak.
The great
Karnak.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was I mean, if that was supposed to be an imitation, I could maybe do Ed McMahon, but I'm not. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. I'm not going to do weird, wild stuff or anything like that either. Crystal ball for the print on demand market. Can I ask you a question? I'm going to answer a question with a question. I'm assuming your listeners do they fall into two camps? Do they fall into, I'm not really a producer. I'm more of a fulfillment person, or a designer, design, fulfill, etc., as opposed to I'm actually doing the graphics, producing the graphics using whether DTG, whatever.
I think you have, I mean, if you want to, talk about demographics, I think you have the people who do more royalty-based stuff. So they are doing the graphics, or they're paying someone to do the graphics and kind of creating a catalog of designs that people, or products that people can purchase. Then you have the makers who are kind of more, they're doing the same thing as the first category, but they're actually producing some of the, at least, if not all of their products. And then you have some people who are doing similar things to us. We're actually fulfilling products for those other categories of people. And so you have kind of three different demographics in our audience.
Okay. Yeah. Just one little background on that for the so-called crystal ball. And I'm just wondering if, do the makers become fewer? Do they become more? I don't know. It depends. It depends on the person, right? Because the person who's getting into business, I think someone who is mechanically inclined, likes to tinker with their car or does stuff around the house, and that's not me, by the way. They're more likely, I think, to be a maker because they enjoy the process of it. I think I think there's joy in the process, and I think what you'll find is this is a business that's definitely going to grow, and I think that you're going to see more people getting into it, definitely. And I think that a lot of people are going to come in it from the maker standpoint, just because they like to do things like that. There's something to be said for doing more than just typing stuff in a keyboard, right? There's something to be said for that. So, and the other part of that too is I think that as the technology continues to, I've seen just radical changes over the years. Because I can remember, when I started at sign business, that maybe half to 75% of the signs were hand painted. Wow. And then people started cutting vinyl and applying vinyl to sign blanks. And what happened was that the hand painters, I remember they'd come to me at a show and they'd say, "Why are you covering all this vinyl graphic? You're killing us with the vinyl graphics. It's killing the industry." And then when wide format printing came out, I had another guy come up to me at a trade show and say, "You're just killing us, traditional vinyl guys." And I'm like, traditional vinyl? Do you remember hand painting?
Yeah.
So there's always gonna be disruptive change. And I think that this market is always going to, from a technology standpoint, is going to see disruptive change constantly.
Yeah.
It's the nature of the beast, and I think it's going to happen even faster than it was in the past.
Yeah, you can see that already with the crickets and the silhouettes that are out there. Right. That technology was not available, and the glow forges. That technology was not available to the masses until these companies kind of put it out there, and now we're seeing more makers, if you will.
Right, and the professional equipment is like I said, is accessible. It's more expensive, but like I said, when you move up to that professional grade equipment, what you're getting along with that is you're getting professional support. You're getting professional attention to your business. That's what my experience has been. Working for a supplier in the graphics market, was that you really paid attention to your customer. And you made sure that you wanted to help them in their business. And I think that's the same throughout the market, is just like us, that I think the manufacturers and suppliers really want to help the people in this market. And because, obviously there's a win-win benefit there. They help someone's business. They're just going to buy more product from you. Right. Yeah. So, there's that selfish incentive, but I think there's also an altruistic incentive as well. And again, if someone's a beginner in this market and they're using a Cricut or a Glowforge or whatever, They really want to get serious. Again, maximize that equipment and then move on to the professional grade and get the professional support and attention you deserve.
Sure. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, great answers on all three of those magic questions for sure. As we begin to wind down here, Regan, let people know where they can find out more info about Graphics Pro Expo, the magazine, publications, all of that kind of stuff. And then we'll wrap this one up.
Okay. Well, I'll give them two easy sites, so I'll make it quick. It's graphics-pro.com. And you can go there to access the website, but everything is there for you. You can go you can go check out the podcast and all the articles that have been written in the newsletter. You can go subscribe, and when you subscribe, you get the newsletter, you get the magazine, a digital version of the magazine, you get the podcast, you get video, you basically get the whole 9 yards of information directed toward you in this industry. And Graphics Pro Expo is graphics-pro-expo. We do a lot of hyphens. Should I call them dashes? No, they're really hyphens. Anyway, yeah. And there's a shortened version of that too that has hyphens. G hyphen P hyphen X.com. Graphics Pro Expo. So you can find everything you need at those two sites. Trust me.
Awesome. Well, that'll definitely be, in the show notes, hyphens and all. We'll put it all in there for our listeners.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. Regan, thanks so much for coming on the show. It's been great, just over the last several months, getting to know you and some of your team over there.
Same here.
You got some great people over there, and look forward to, continuing our relationship and getting this podcast out to some people and, reinforcing what we're saying all the time, guys, you got to get to a show. And the cool thing about Graphics Pro is that the Graphics Pro Expo is that they go all over the country. It's not just kind of an East Coast, West Coast, Central thing. They're going all over, and every other year they kind of switch all of their cities. So there's inevitably in the next 2 years, there's something that's close enough for you to, get your butt there and learn about some of this stuff and do yourself a favor. So,
thanks for the plug.
Yeah, man. So Regan, thanks so much for coming on, and
appreciate y'all.
We'll talk to you next time.
Okay, send all the hate mail to a guy named Dave Pomeroy, by the way.
His email is Dave-Pomeroy-
a lot of hyphens. D-A-V.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Awesome. Thanks, Regan. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Appreciate y'all.
All right. We want to thank Regan again for taking time out of his schedule to come on our podcast. It's always fun to me. And I've been in that situation too, where the interviewer becomes the interviewee, and then the interviewee has a hard time not becoming the interviewer and kind of just trying to fall into those roles in the given episode. So he did a great job. It was a great conversation, super easy to talk to, and just really, I think gave really good perspectives on a lot of things in the print industry. And he has such an extensive history just in print in general, whether it's the written word, whether it's signs, whether it's shirts, whatever it is. Super, super informative.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there were some questions that I would have liked to have asked, like, for instance, what's it like on the other side of the trade show table? Like setting it up, and how much time does it take? How many people have to come out? What do
so
all
many
those
moving
things.
Pieces.
I mean, I know that isn't necessarily specific to print on demand, but I was just curious.
There's some questions that are self-serving, right? I mean, I think for me, if you and I both have been a part of in the church world, conferences and big events like that, and bringing in multiple bands and kind of working in the merch booths and stuff like that. So just knowing having a small, probably in comparison, taste of what that is. Just the respect you have for them for a 2.5-3 day thing that's just massive in vendors and thousands of people attending. Like it's the logistics. It's fascinating to me.
And they do several of them a year.
Yeah.
Many of them, 5 or 6 or something like that. I mean, it's just crazy. And they do it every single year.
And it would be fascinating to know how much of it is automated in a box kind of thing, like rinse, repeat, and how much changes each given year or each location. So the next time he's on, those are questions that we should ask him. Again, because we're interested. And the listener, you'll learn something.
And there's one more thing I wanted to, I feel like he brushed over the fact a little bit that all of the stuff they do is free. You know,
yes,
all
100%.
of their expos are free. You can go to their website with all the hyphens and all that stuff, or you can just look in the show notes and click a link. But
yes, do that.
You can go and you can sign up. You can sign up to their newsletter mailing list, and you can get the magazine, an actual physical magazine. As a matter of fact, this one right here, you can get it. It is sent to you for free every single month. And yeah, it's pretty awesome. So I would totally consider that because it's free, you know, just free. Go do it.
Yeah. It's not like you're, and you don't have to exchange any money for it, but the value of it is so, the reason we're emphasizing the free aspect is because of the value that those types of things, whether it's the newsletter, whether it's the magazine, the trade shows are free to register for. The value that you're getting in exchange for no monetary value is incredible. So certainly do that. And if you don't subscribe, then you know what you get.
So you get nothing.
Yeah, you get nothing. So don't be that guy. Just do it. It's free and it's an incredible value. So again, we want to thank Regan for coming on the show. We want to thank you guys for listening to the show. Of course, without you, Travis and I are talking to ourselves, and we do that enough. So it's nice to know that we're talking to other people. If you're watching the video, Travis just gave me a very strange, like, sure you did. Yeah. He's trying to pretend like he don't talk to himself. Anyway, so if you want to get in touch with us and have a conversation,
Hotline fans,
there's a couple of different ways that you can do it. Of course, printondemancast.com/Facebook. We've talked a lot about it. The group is growing. The conversations are growing. There's lots of cool questions being asked and lots of ideas for content that we have for that group, for that community. So avail yourself of that as well. Let's talk about free. Everything that we're about to tell you is completely free. It's a push of a button, including this podcast. So printondemancast.com/Facebook is where you can go to join the group, the conversation. We're also on Instagram. printondemancast.com/Instagram is where you can go to find some more content. A lot of in the moment happening now stuff. Instagram stories kind of lend themselves to those in the moment posts. So a lot of that's going to be happening. And as we expand and go to more trade shows, a lot of that kind of vlog stuff is going to be happening there. And Travis is actively taking a picture. So I'm going to put it on myself so that he doesn't see himself taking the picture because that's awkward to see. I know I've done it way too many times and put it on Instagram. So so we're also on YouTube. printondemancast.com/YouTube is where you can go to find these episodes kind of as an archive, but there is ideas and plans to hopefully expand that to be a little bit more educational, informational, and exclusive content as well. And if you guys want to help us in another way, aside from just, of course, liking and joining all of these groups, if you want to help support the show monetarily, one way you can do that is print on demand. My God, I was doing so well, and then I completely lost the vibe. That's the wrong sound cue too.
Yeah,
that's the right one. So printondemancast.com/shop is where you guys can go to pick up a t-shirt and help kind of support monetarily and fund the ideas awesome. And the stuff. It was awesome, Chris Farley. Thank you. I wish. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Completely derailed this blog that I go to every single time. But we greatly appreciate you guys' support in that way as well. If you want to help kind of bring these ideas we have for content on these platforms to life, that would be awesome. So thank you guys so much. And as always, wherever there are podcasts, the PODcast is there for you. If you're happening to be listening on the Apple Podcast, leave us a review and let us know what you think of the show. Same thing on Spotify. We want to conquer the algorithms. We talked a couple of weeks ago, depending on when this airs, about algorithms and wanting to conquer them. But honestly, share, like, subscribe, get this content to those that you think would be helpful for. Post it in other groups, print on demand groups, if you think it'd be helpful for them. And we're greatly, greatly appreciative. So with that being said, we will see you guys next week. For Travis, I'm Josiah, and we'll see you right here on the Print on Demand cast.
See ya.
Hey, babe. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Print on Demand Cast. We hope you enjoyed the Totally Tubular Show. If you've got a question or a suggestion for the show, send Travis and Josiah an email at info@printondemandcast.com. Want to be wicked nice? Take a minute to rate and review the show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe now so you don't miss next week's episode. See you next time, for sure.